Thanks for being here, everybody. This is my first Economic Development and Infrastructure Committee meeting. Partners is a national redeveloper of mostly in-town type projects, super successful, and have raised a ton of money, which makes them an immediate player when it comes to these types of redevelopments. What I want to do is have somebody come in each one of these meetings and talk about how and also what are the certain challenges and opportunities that they see for Columbia as far as economic development. So we're going to go ahead and jump right in. Oh, yeah, go ahead. Sorry, Mary.
All right, for the record, I've noted the attendance and that Dr. Bustles is participating remotely. Thank you.
All right, you're welcome. So anyway, there's hard copies of the presentation as well. Right.
Yeah.
And I'm sure Jason will be fine with this. We want to make this as, interactive as possible. I think we all realize that, economic development in Columbia is challenging, but also it's not to the point where it's challenging to the point where it can't happen. So, anyway, thank you for coming today. Mike.
Absolutely.
All right. Yep, go ahead.
Want to just jump in?
Jump right in.
Perfect. Well, first of all, we're honored to be here. We represent Asana Partners, which is a company that was founded here in Columbia about 8 years ago. A number of us worked at Edens, who I'm sure many of you are familiar with Edens, a company that had been headquartered here for 60 plus years. In 2015, a few of us left Edens to form Asana Partners, and we saw an opportunity across the country in really cool near urban neighborhoods to aggregate institutional capital and bring some expertise to renovate buildings, bring interesting local regional tenants into the neighborhoods, and really drive economic activity in urban and near urban neighborhoods across the country. Today, 105 people. We have 6 offices in addition to the office here in Columbia. We have a portfolio of about $7 billion of assets in 26 cities. And we've invested in about 65 neighborhoods across those cities in the U.S. There's no city that is more important or dear to us than Columbia. So we have been and will continue to look for opportunities to invest here. We've not yet invested here beyond having a significant office in Columbia, and we can talk a little bit about why that is. But we are, I would say our roots are certainly in South Carolina. A third of our people went to a South Carolina undergraduate school. We have a significant office in Columbia, but our investment strategy is pretty simple. Most of the investments we make are in neighborhoods that look like the Vista or look like Five Points. We're active in Charleston. We're active in Nashville, Charlotte, Raleigh-Durham. Most of our assets are in the Sun Belt or Mountain West, and then we have some other investments. You can see some images in the document in some larger cities as well. But we really prefer, for a lot of reasons, the Sun Belt cities that are high growth, a little bit easier to do business in, and where we think a lot of the future is from an economic development perspective. So our strategy is to sort of quietly kind of move into a neighborhood, identify owners, and most of these neighborhoods, the owners are local, and we will look for an opportunity we don't have to own everything in the neighborhood, but we want to own enough critical mass where we can put our capital to work and improve buildings and really change in a good way or enhance the way a neighborhood feels.
A lot of these investments, do they come to you or do you go to them?
It's a really interesting business model because we have tenants, growing local tenants, growing regional tenants, and then growing national tenants who come to us and say, we want to be in this neighborhood. These are our requirements. Can you help us find a building? And we may have a building that works for them or a space that works for them, or oftentimes knowing what their requirements are, quietly go into a neighborhood and look for an opportunity to acquire a building, renovate it, and then put them in place to make the neighborhood more vibrant. And generally, when we move into a neighborhood, we really celebrate the history in the neighborhood. We celebrate and identify the local tenants that are beloved by the community, and we protect them and want to keep them in those neighborhoods. But when we get involved, we're very focused on making the place vibrant, making the neighborhood active 18 hours a day, 7 days a week. So we're very focused on being really strategic about the merchandising of the ground floor retail. We want to have coffee shops, fitness, restaurants, soft goods, service oriented tenants. And then upstairs, typically there's a few stories upstairs of creative office and residential. And the types of neighborhoods that we invest in, young people want to live there because there's a really cool amenity base on the ground floor, and interesting high growth companies want to be there because, especially now post COVID, you really need to offer your employees something different. And the cool neighborhood and what's happening on the ground floor is that amenity that a lot of the employers are looking for.
Is there a certain mix or certain metric that's associated with the number of people who have to actually live in that area?
We're very focused on a 1 mile radius because most of our investments draw from a more distant radius, but we love to invest in neighborhoods that are walkable, where people can walk to the businesses, they can walk to work, they can go there and walk to some really interesting stuff. So we start with what are the 1 mile kind of metrics, and we're really focused on places where at least 15,000 people live with a near urban experience. And we're also focused on growth. So we want density, but then we also want to see, projections where that population is going to increase by at least 1.5% a year, which is 2 to 3 times the national average. And usually there's a high correlation between growth, and there's a high correlation between job growth and income growth. And just to be blunt, obviously we all know this, but Columbia had lagged a lot of what I would consider sort of peer cities in the Southeast from a job growth, income growth.
Yeah, I always find this so frustrating because of all the things that we have going on here. And we talk about it a lot. What would you consider the chicken in that? It's
circular. That's a really good question, because we are very focused on investing in neighborhoods that can catch fire, and when they catch fire, they catch fire. Once there's interest from really cool businesses to be on the ground floor, all of a sudden, really interesting high growth, office users want to be upstairs. All of a sudden, young people want to live in the neighborhood. Institutional capital, wants to live in the neighborhood. So we're just looking for neighborhoods where we can get involved and help it sort of catch fire. And one of the things that excites me the most about Columbia is I continue to believe Columbia, and by definition with our jobs, we travel all over the country and spend a lot of time in cities like Columbia. And I think Columbia is probably the single greatest opportunity of a secondary city from a population perspective that we see across the country.
So you've got this wonderful investment overview, I'm sure, that y'all go through. Here's the list here. I mean, how far off is Columbia from these metrics that would really engage the private investment?
Yeah,
y'all need to start.
Yeah, and we're willing to. We categorize neighborhoods as sort of, pioneering neighborhoods, emerging neighborhoods, and then established neighborhoods. And we tend to want to invest in emerging neighborhoods. And we're willing to make a bet. We don't have to check we're very quantitative, we're also qualitative. We want the trends to be moving in the right direction, but we don't have to check every single box from metrics. In fact, a lot of neighborhoods we invest in don't check all the boxes, but we get a gut feel that there's really good momentum. And if we can get involved, we can help accelerate that momentum. And by the time we're done with our physical work 5-7 years later, the metrics all do sort of conform with our investment criteria.
Have you found that these trending neighborhoods, often have a municipal component to participate with you? Did you, in all these larger markets, do you have public-private partnerships that you've worked on, or?
And I wouldn't say it's not as common on a formal basis, but informally, there's a lot of support from the municipalities. If we move into a new city and we're not a known quantity, the initial reaction is, who are these guys from South Carolina or from Charlotte that are moving into our city and buying properties? But once we show them what we've done in other cities, their
You won't get that here now.
yeah, their blood pressure goes down, and they're really excited because we preserve existing buildings. We love historic buildings. We love what makes a neighborhood diverse and energetic and dynamic, and that celebrate that and want to defend that and enhance that. And we really believe that a lifting tide does raise all boats. So if we can drive traffic 18 hours a day, 7 days a week to a neighborhood, every business in that neighborhood is going to do better and generate more sales.
We worked with Asana and Colite on the signage for their couple projects in Atlanta. One was Krog Street. And to be honest with you, the first, I've only been to Krog Street once, and that was at the very beginning. That area appeared at the beginning not to check a whole lot of boxes. So
That's right.
I'm curious as to what drove you to Krog Street. And you can Google it. It's an amazing redevelopment in town. Well, it's the Beltline.
It is, it's in town, but it's
town.
very much like, obviously on a different scale, but it's embedded in a residential neighborhood.
Right.
Like, very much like Five Places.
Yeah.
And we love that. A lot of people can walk to those buildings. There's a lot of history there. The Stoveworks building used to be a manufacturing facility for stoves. It's a 100-year-old building. We renovated the building. It's right on the East Atlanta Beltline.
So the Beltline, then the deciding factor for that area?
It was a big part of the deciding factor. And I think we have in Columbia, stating the obvious, like a lot of this is not rocket science. A lot of this is pretty obvious, but we have the single greatest Beltline opportunity along the river that Atlanta doesn't have. But that Beltline in Atlanta is now like waterfront property. Like everyone wants to be on or within walking distance of the Beltline. So that was a big factor for us. And then just the historic buildings, neighborhood with a lot of history. MLK's birthplace is 3/4 of a mile from those buildings. So it was just a really cool place to come in and invest. And, but it's, I think to get back to your question, I would say the single most important factor for us is we need to see some growth. Like we can bet on where the numbers are going to go, like where the population is going to go in a neighborhood, where the, other metrics are going to go, but it needs to be vibrant. There needs to be growth. And we all know this. We look at the bar charts, we compare Columbia to another dozen or so, secondary from a size perspective cities in the Southeast. And we're pretty consistently in the bottom quartile on an income growth perspective, population growth, job growth. And until we start to see that, bend a bit, we've been reluctant to invest because we don't want to be the only national institutional investor in a city or in a neighborhood. We want to invest with others. And ultimately, we're going to improve our properties, and eventually we may want to sell them, and we want to know that there are other institutional investors that are going to buy the properties when we're done. So that's been but I think we're getting close. I mean, I think Columbia's the type of city, state capital, major university influence, Southeast. It should catch fire, and we're willing to be on the front end of that.
Is there kind of a time period in your mind until we're there? 2 years.
I think it's going to take a few more announcements of major employers. I think
Opening up the river.
there's a lot of good things happening here. I think we need to make Columbia even cooler for young people. I think Columbia has incredible natural resources, and in my opinion, if we just focused on 5 Points and the river, and by definition, if we focus on the river, we're focusing on Vista.
Right.
We, in 5 years, could have just two vibrant 18-hour days, 7-day-a-week neighborhoods. Right now, 5 Points is too far and food and beverage centric, and the river is just an untapped opportunity.
The river is just a river.
The river is just a river, and the damage from the flood in 2015 has not been repaired. I run down there all the time. It's sad. Like if that damage had happened in Chattanooga, it would be repaired. It'd be better than it was ever before, and it's still So I think as soon as we start to see activity, we would get behind it. It's really just, I think it is a chicken and an egg thing, right? We need to make Columbia cooler for young people. And then I think employers are going to also want to be here. And I know you're already working on, making it an even more business friendly place to start a business. So.
Jason, do you feel like that concept of a rising tide maybe needs to be amplified, the message about that? Erica's gonna get me because I'm not on the mic. Because I think in Columbia too, I guess from my vantage point, which is more the practitioner and of course the mayor and the council members, the policymakers in this city where we're broken up into districts. And oftentimes there are some areas of the city that may have over time felt disenfranchised, or it's not our time, or we're not focused on. But I think what you just said is really interesting to me, because you said you focus on the vista, focus on making it a cool place, focus on the riverfront, and put that focus and energy in it and make it happen, make people come. But I think what's missing sometimes in the narrative is once you do that, that rising tide then affects all the other districts and all the other communities. And I really feel like we try to spread ourselves a little bit too thin, and we're trying to accommodate maybe the other surrounding areas and districts. And from your perspective as a developer, how could you give us some advice on how we narrate that better about that rising tide and what that would do for economy and commerce and keeping our critical infrastructure, which is human beings and young people, right here?
I think you just said it. I mean, I think if you look at what our income growth has been over the last 10 years on an average household basis for the entire city, the entire metropolitan area, we're at the bottom of the list of medium-sized southeastern cities. And I just think, I think if we can make Columbia cooler for young people, employers are going to want to be here. There will be a rising tide for everyone, regardless of what district you live in. And there's going to be better jobs, better paying jobs. And then I think we'll have the resources at that point to really focus on all the districts. But I think we need to be strategic and not spread ourselves too thin. We have two, I think, really near-term opportunities to really have Columbia catch fire. And I think everyone will benefit. But I hear you. It feels it's more challenging, sitting in your seat than in my seat.
Yeah. I was just wondering if there are other cities, like you mentioned, where you've seen that happen and they did focus in, but no one was left behind ultimately. And maybe we could use that to our advantage too, to, use them as examples.
Yeah.
I think it's amazing. And maybe this is, apples and pecans. I just think it's amazing how Charlotte has just transformed itself in a really short amount of time. I mean, so I'm not sure that, how we relate to Charlotte, but, 20 years ago, I mean, Charlotte was dead. I mean, if you're downtown or anywhere, what's that airport?
Yeah, you ask any of those leaders up there, they'll tell you that their change came when it became the US Air.
Yeah. I mean, so how long was that? That was 20 years ago, right?
That finished started.
Yeah, so 20 years ago, then what you find out is that, all the number of like in-town living developments in Charlotte are just amazing.
Yeah, I agree. And there are a lot of examples in Charlotte of neighborhoods that have improved over time, and there have been incredible job opportunities in Charlotte. So I do think that's probably a good case study. I know we don't want to be Charlotte, but
Right. But
I think if in Columbia was more vibrant, and there was better job growth and better income growth, every citizen would benefit.
so two other quick questions. So how do you see USC participating in this, 5 Points Vista River? I mean, what's the best way to incorporate them into this vision or growth?
I mean, they're here, and you have thousands of families passing through the city multiple times a year, and a lot of young people come here for 4 years and then leave. It sure would be nice to, I think we're already making a really positive impression. We could make an incredible impression on all those people. And I don't necessarily think it has to be in partnership with the university. I think we already have a university as an asset and as a resource. I don't think it's going to take the university's partnership to reinvent 5 Points or reinvent the riverfront. I know that the university has some land and they're trying to figure out what to do with the land, including some land, on the riverfront. But I think that's a small part of the puzzle. It's another selling point when you're trying to get employers here. It's an incredible thing.
Uses their research and their patents and all the things there to create businesses that can grow here. And that's also our economic part, I think, from an infrastructure and development, we gotta find the right partners with a vision that can take a place like 5 Points and drop $100 million in it and change 3 blocks where suddenly it becomes a vibrant. I mean, you look at the south end of Charlotte's a perfect example.
It is.
You had Price's chicken coop there for, 4 decades, still one of my favorite places to eat chicken. But it was all industrial. Now you've got Jenny's Ice Cream that probably does, I think it's one of their top stores that the CEO told me. So, that's concentration of what we're living. They allow towers. They're allowing creativity to happen. The cross section of the business and the retail is what we keep saying. We need more people living downtown, more options.
That would be my next question. So in-town living, so if we could help develop or improve in-town living in the Vista, how important do you think that would be?
I think it would be huge. I think it's a missed opportunity. The fact that there aren't incredible places for young people to live within a few blocks of Gervais Street. I mean, there are a few, but from the Capitol down to the river, all along within a few blocks of Gervais Street should just be a mecca for young professionals, in my opinion. And if you could get to the river, you could get to Main Street easily. It would be amazing. Getting back to Charlotte, I think Charlotte wishes like they had the University of South Carolina. Charlotte wishes they had a river. Charlotte wishes they were a state capital. I think they did all that over the last 20 years without those resources.
I think we really have to do a good job of attracting that sophisticated customer, because that's what all of these national retailers and restaurants want. And not to say that we want only nationals to come into Columbia, but I think that's like a big piece of it, right? Because they think the same way we do. We want a sophisticated consumer. We want walkability. We want that 18-hour neighborhood where we can walk, live, work, and play. And I mean, that's why we've been successful across the country as a company in partnering with a lot of these tenants. We're Jenny's largest landlord, we're Patagonia's largest landlord. And I think tenants like that are really transformative. And to that end, I think there's another layer of it is finding the right institutional capital to come into Columbia, because for us, it's not just about making money. It's really, really important to us to create that right merchandising mix. We want the gym use, the service use, the restaurant, breakfast user, and then someone you can go grab a cocktail at 5 o'clock and also have a great dinner. So I think that's a really important piece of it, because it's not just buying real estate and, changing Columbia. It's buying real estate and curating the perfect tenant mix that really does attract that sophisticated consumer. That young person who's coming from USC and scoring a great job who really wants to spend some money.
I think adding to that, so we created this intercollegiate council engagement, and that's what we heard from those young folks. The reason they're choosing other places is they're vibrant. They want to be able to walk to work. They want to be able to walk to entertainment. They want all their resources right there within, much like they had at the university in a downtown setting. They want to be part of that. And that's what they're looking for. That's why they're thriving to places like Columbus and Nashville and Charlotte, and et cetera. You see, I think one of the things we've missed is part of it is we don't market our community. We don't share. There are not a lot of communities that have 3 major highways, 60,000 students, let alone the 4,000 recruits, at the 45,000 recruits that come rolling through here, and 15 million visitors a year. I mean, Myrtle Beach only gets 22 million visitors. So when we look at that, but our visitors, only a third of them are spending the night. So the more we can activate the river, the more we create more activity. The mix of chain and local are important because that creates excitement. You know, we've seen people will flock here for a chain because within, 20 minutes, you're in 5 different counties. There's a huge draw from where we sit. We just haven't really told our story.
We've always said that it's really hard to recruit people to Columbia, but once they're here, they don't want to leave. So if we can fix like the top of that funnel and make it easier to recruit, this place is going to catch fire. People don't leave. Once they get here, they love it.
Jason, let me ask you something. You're in these markets that are high demand, high growth, and have a steady record of that for a long time and moving into the future. We, hopefully get a piece of that someday. Locally, the municipalities, counties you've worked with in these areas, any incentive packages they've put your way, maybe outside of, just your standard water tap fees, stuff like that, like the really big things that make you take a second look?
The biggest stuff that we're working on in a few cities we're working on a few adaptive reuse projects where we're converting, I would say a Class B or Class C obsolete office building, which doesn't have a very bright future, as we all know, into a really vibrant mixed use residential and retail building. And a few cities are using us as a case study and incentivizing us,
For your
property
investment,
tax
just flip it,
perspective.
yeah.
They want to have that case study to attract additional institutional capital to the city to do the same thing, because most cities are dealing with half of their office inventory is never going to lease up.
Right.
Well, and we see that. I mean, I just sat through yesterday through a meeting in town where there were a group of realtors and exactly what we're talking about. We have a shortage of Class A space. We need some new towers. We haven't had one since 2019. But we also 2010, but we also have a whole network.
You're looking at one through the window. Right?
Adaptive reuse for residential, mixed use, this and that, would help us speed up the downtown, but it takes the right person to understand how to make that happen. And it's tax credits the issue, and that's what we talked about yesterday. As a matter of fact, could we issue tax credits as an incentive to get that type of investment here?
For that activity, it probably is, it will require some tax credits because on a standalone basis, the numbers just don't make sense.
Mm-hmm.
Just the construction costs, just to
the
conversion
cost,
plumbing, everything. Yeah.
Most of the office footprints aren't the right dimensions for residential, so you have to think really creatively.
Something to think of. Thank you.
Yeah.
You want to run through the case study?
Yeah, I think we touched on, you guys can get a sense for a lot of the neighborhoods you invest in. We put the case study of the south end of Charlotte in here because this is a really good example of a place that caught fire and in a very short period of time, a decade, is now the most vibrant neighborhood in the city of Charlotte. So we, you can see on page 10, this is kind of typically what we like to do. We like to sort of quietly move into a neighborhood and buy some buildings, try to get critical mass. We bought, through 14 transactions, 14 buildings in the south end of Charlotte. It's about 300,000 square feet. Initially invested $94 million. And then over the ensuing couple of years, we put another $50 million into those buildings, just to give you a sense for the order of magnitude of the capital that we're going to put into the buildings to improve them. And you can see some of the metrics here. Population exceeds our 15,000 person target. It was much lower than that when we first started investing here. Population growth, this is a neighborhood that's growing 2.5% a year. Walk score is really important to us, and the neighborhoods we're talking about in Columbia have really high walk scores. They're very convenient places for people to walk and accomplish all of their daily kind of errands on foot. These types of neighborhoods typically attract the young professionals. You can see the average age in the south end is 34. You can kind of see some of the other metrics, and then the tenants, we thought it was important to give you a sense for the tenants, because our strategy is not to bring a bunch of national tenants into a neighborhood and just destroy the soul of a neighborhood. We are very thoughtful we want primarily local tenants and regional tenants. We're very selective when we bring in a national tenant. Our national tenants need to kind of feel like a local or regional tenant. So it's the Patagonias, who have an incredible mission, or Jenny's, those are national tenants that kind of feel like more local and regional tenants, and we think are additive to the neighborhood. And then you can just see some before and after pictures. So we'll buy one-off dilapidated buildings, we'll buy entire city blocks. I think one of the most transformative photos here is on page 12. You can see that service alley at the top left corner of page 12 that was only being used to backload, some of the pre-existing tenants. We ripped all of that out, converted it to pedestrian only, popped in some storefronts, and now on a weekend or even in the evenings, that's one of the most trafficked pedestrian corridors in the city of Charlotte. Just a really vibrant place. We have markets there, festivals, live music. It really contributes to we think the quality of life of the community of Charlotte.
Do y'all leverage historic tax credits?
We do in some places. Most of our investors are tax exempt investors, big state pension funds and sovereign wealth fund types. So federal programs don't benefit our investors as much, but the municipal programs certainly do. And the last thing I would say, touched on it, but ESG is really important to us. And what's really cool about our strategy, from a sustainability perspective, we're typically buying existing buildings that are not very energy efficient, bringing them up to standards, investing significantly in them, making them very energy efficient. We're not tearing down trees, building new buildings. We're investing in neighborhoods that are diverse. We want our tenants to represent the diversity of our neighborhood. We have a tremendous number of minority-owned businesses, women-owned businesses across our portfolio, and that's really important to us. We think part of what makes these neighborhoods, vibrant and an attractive place to spend time.
How much participation does the utility play sometimes? Is it with the local government? I'm looking at the lines are removed in some of these pictures, and is that more of a common thing than it is here, where we have to really request it? And we have good relationships with Dominion and all, but
there are programs. We have a director of ESG who has a relationship with some of the power companies, and there are programs that we can take advantage of when we make our buildings more energy efficient. And I would say generally, and I think one of the reasons we prefer to invest in the Sun Belt versus like some other gateway cities is it is easier to engage the municipality or to engage the utility companies to beautify the street or the corner. I think that's one thing that we all know. Columbia needs to be beautified. Like there's, a lot of power lines need to get under the street. There's just, I think that would just be part of the solution of attracting institutional capital to the city. But yes, we cities like Charlotte, Dallas, even Charleston, Nashville have been easier places for us to do business.
the relationships are good with all the partners.
Yes. Any other questions?
My only question is Paige your official City of Columbia, broker in charge?
Absolutely.
Biggest cheerleader?
Absolutely.
She lives in the district, Peter, so.
Good.
She's
We
a big champion of
we're
Divine
excited
Street.
to have Paige on the team. She's joined us, I guess, about a year ago, and leads a big portfolio from a leasing perspective for us. So she sees a lot.
And she's saying good things about the city.
She cares, as we all do, about the city. So it was important for her to be here today.
Born and raised here, so definitely hopeful that we can make Columbia
Stay
something
here.
special. I will be here for the long haul, so let's do what we need to do to get these awesome folks into Columbia.
Absolutely. Great. Thanks so much.
Any other questions? Anybody? Jeff, got anything? No. Good. All right. You guys, thanks a lot. I really appreciate you coming.
Thank you, Tom.
Appreciate the invite. Anytime.
This is
Thank you all so much.
Thanks. Thanks, man. Thanks, everyone.
Thank y'all.
I'll tell Andy.
Y'all take care. Thank you. Yeah, please do.
Oh, well.
You'll have a good one.
Thanks. Keep it. All right. You guys want to move on to the next issue? Brian, you want to
Yes, sir.
This one up.
Absolutely. Well, first of all, before we do that, I did want to take a quick moment to introduce Grace Salter, who is our new business recruiter with the Office of Economic Development. I'm not sure if everybody's had the opportunity to meet her yet. She's just started her 4th week with the office, but this is a position we've worked on filling for a while, and we're incredibly excited to have her with the team. So
Great, thanks, appreciate it. I think we're on the same schedule. I think I've been here. Well, 4 weeks feels like 4 years.
So the first item we have up is the Central SC Alliance contract for services. This is the contract for the current year that we are in now. This item had previously been referred out of committee late last year, along with all the other partner contracts. We brought it back to committee for consideration, but we're pretty late in the budget year right now. And so wanted to kind of bring this back up with y'all. I know we will need to get some consensus on the contract. And if we intend to pay the $72,000 for the current year, we do need to kind of resolve that, because it probably will need to go back to council for an official approval. And I think, you know, probably a little more importantly, something that we had discussed earlier, we're coming into a fresh year. We've got new leadership, new staff members, probably a good time for us to sit down, not just with this, but with our other partner contracts, and really assess our strategic plan that we put together last year, where we're going as a city, what our partners can bring to the table, and make sure that the items that we request that they work on our behalf are really reflective of where we want to go with our economic development priorities.
I think that's extremely well said. You know, I mean, some of these issues that are coming up, I call them hangover issues for me, because they go back a long way, and you know, I have been here a long time. So this particular $72,000 covers what period of time?
July of last year, July 1 to
Basically
June 30.
This is
year.
it's like the
So retroactively.
yeah, it's like the budget negotiations in
Yeah.
Congress talking about budget. We're negotiating the past.
Mhm.
So I mean, I feel like
As towards the future.
yeah, right.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I agree with you.
I feel like we're kind of beholden. I mean, this money's already been budgeted, right?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So I mean, I feel like it feels like we're obligated to this money. However, it doesn't feel like we're obligated to the future. And I think you bring up a really good point. I mean, I think, you know, if you just listen to what we just heard and the things we've been talking about, I think we're all extremely open. You know, it's like we're on a, you know, awareness tour, you know, of you know, what are we going to do going forward? And so it feels like an amazing opportunity time going forward. And, you know, if this doesn't fit with what we think we should be spending money on, then I think I'm open to that as well. Well,
Yeah, I agree. Looking proactively, I think we have to meet this commitment moving forward. We need to let them fit into the story we're going to tell.
Right.
And the role that they play. Is it more of a who's that organization out there really buttoning up our workforce development pursuits, connecting to the universities? That's been a big gap. Maybe that this is somewhere where they can step in. But I'd like to see them come to us, do some research, tell us how we can fit into your plan. So
yeah, with some, you know, I hate the word deliverable because it's overused, but it's really still true. What are they, you know, what are they selling for us? You know, so we're all selling something. So when it comes to Columbia, what are they selling?
well, and Mr. Chairman, I tell you, with Scout coming, I think everybody's game plan is changing for economic
You're
development.
right.
Roles are being redefined. So it'll be interesting to see who's doing what in the next 3-4 months.
Right.
But I
Can I
think
ask a clarifying question? So the 72,000 was committed this past budget cycle, correct?
Yes,
Or are
ma'am.
we talking about what's coming up now?
Yes, ma'am. Passed.
Okay. One of the things that we had talked about, Councilman Taylor and I and the mayor had met with Central SC Alliance at the end of last year, was focusing on one piece of what they're good at, and potentially it being just doing research for us or helping market a particular component that we may not have the capacity for. And Councilman Brennan, I know we had potentially talked about a $25,000 investment in the past, but I do want to put that on the table in terms of really narrowing down and taking full kind of advantage of maybe a particular skill set that the Central SC Alliance has. One of the concerns we've had is, first of all, even the term Central SC is not widely understood or used. So as we're thinking about telling our story, Columbia often gets lost in some of their efforts because it's focused on a much larger region.
I totally agree with the concept that, I mean, I'm not even sure if Columbia really even resonates with their work, so I think it's just important for us to understand how we fit into, because they represent 7 counties.
Counties.
8 region in
Yeah.
the city.
Right. So I mean, it's a big footprint.
Yeah. They do research for us, marketing support. One thing we were actually talking about earlier was having them do a custom drone fly over the river. We could certainly probably use in our repertoire at some point going forward a package that promotes the riverfront as an opportunity in its whole. I think there's some things out there, but
good. I think it also goes back to, I think his comment about how we've done not marketed ourselves, we always talk about 2 different things, marketing and messaging, they're different, but they're similar. Marketing is making you better than you are to somebody else. Messaging is how you present yourself as yourself to everybody else. So when it comes to marketing and messaging, I think we even talked about this with the police force. We have to develop the proper marketing and messaging for Columbia.
And that's in progress, correct, with the RFP submissions that are coming in from the broader
At least
approach, which I think
broader.
the economic development marketing is a component of that.
correct. We've gotten all the feedback back from the Moore School on the research projects that the students were working on. We're still kind of digesting that because we got it back 2 or 3 weeks ago. But I think kind of having that informed consensus from that targeted audience that we want to have more of, because we lose them right after college. I mean, we're great in the Gen Z demographic, 18 to 24, and then 25 to 30, there's just a drop off. And we've gotten some pretty good intelligence from them as far as where some gaps are.
So today's request is retroactively go ahead with what we owe on the last contract. And then in the future, we're just going to wait for proposal to come in. We're not going to specifically budget a line item for that component. What's the moving forward request?
So going forward, there's no obligation for us to do anything in the upcoming fiscal year. We do have funds budgeted within the economic development budget for this group or other groups.
Okay. Right.
So what we had discussed yesterday and this morning, and really this is something that we've discussed over the past year. We've had a lot of things going on, so maybe we haven't given it the full flashlight look or full look at as we should. But we need in the early fall to have this group and various other groups that we fund that are supposed to support us to come and talk to us about what they really can do for us that supports the mission and what the city expects. And then we can make a determination of if we're going to utilize them and to what extent and what that cost is going to be. So I would argue that even for the upcoming year, it might not be 72,000. It might only be 20,000.
Yeah,
it depends upon how we're going to utilize them. But as we get through the summer, we need to have some good in-depth discussions with this committee and with these groups coming in. And it might be that some of these people that we have funded in the past, they can't really provide something for us for what we need. And that it might be time for us to say we're done. Or it might be that they're going to adapt, or it might be they have certain parts of what they currently provide that can assist us.
Well, I know that I'm on a day-to-day relationship with every one of my customers. So I think we have to just really relook at what we're doing, why we're doing it, and what we plan to get out of it. Go from there.
But am I wrong in thinking that overall branding marketing company we bring in could carve out a la carte option for an economic development consultant to come in and help us with that particular, I guess, part. You see what I'm saying? So here we are, we're rebranding all of City of Columbia, everything we do in that niche of economic development. There might be somebody specifically that can come in and fill what we need there. That's where a consultant like this could get funding.
Yeah, or potentially even the specific industry that we have our eye on that the RFP isn't covering. I agree with you. I think that we could do something like that where we bring them in.
If I've read this before, I'm gonna apologize in advance. I'm saying this because I just think this really ties into what we're talking about. So, and what the mayor said. So this is by the Andy Golubitsky, who's the head of Austral Development, gonna do the apartments over there by Noni Deli. So this is his quote out of the state newspaper. Columbia is still a little bit under the radar, which is attractive to us. Okay, so keep in mind, think about where this is going. The region's stabilizing factors, which include government offices, universities, healthcare facilities, Fort Jackson, and the Bull Street District, make Austral Development confident in the project's success. Okay. It also goes on to say certain types of retail tenants and certain types of places, physical features will attract young people. That's what I want. That's the marketing and that's the messaging that we want in Columbia. As this guy tells us, we're under the radar.
Straight from the investor's mouth.
We don't want to be under the radar. We want the radar on us, and we've got to figure out how to get people to know who we are. The concept that if you drag people kicking and screaming here, they'll love it, is not a marketing plan. Sorry. And that's what we got to get out of this. We got to get out of this mentality that if we can get people here, they'll love it. Nobody else's, that's not on anybody else's website, I promise you. So this is when I talk about marketing and messaging. That's what I want to market and message, is that we do have all these things and we are going to be a vibrant community. And my point is, when you market something, what you do is you say, I am a vibrant community. And then you say how. Okay, so that's marketing, it's not lying. But it's also representing what you want to be, not who you are. So what we got to do is represent where we're going, not where we've been. And I think that's just so important to just, have this basic awareness of that's the way the world sees us.
We want our messaging to be affirmative, not aspirational.
Yeah, right. I mean, this is, and I'm just telling you, all those things, even when I read it, I was just like, oh, wow, he really summed that up great. That's what we want people to know. We just got to do a better job telling stories. And I'm not saying, that's not everything, but that's a good start. Telling a really good story. We're all selling ourselves every day. I mean, I tell everybody that works, at Colite, every day you talk to somebody, you're selling you and us to somebody. So make sure you're selling us the way we want to be seen. So it's just that important. So as we tie all this together, that's really what I think we got to focus on is how to message and market ourselves into the future. To get Jason to say, we're going to do this, not that we could do this, but we're going to do this. And we believe in, where the city's going. And it's interesting. I mean, I think their metrics are amazing. We're a data-driven world, but I also think that what he told you was there's data, but there's also some trust and some, sorry, I would say this, there's some, believability and, hey, we got faith in this city and we have faith in this community and we got faith in the future. And if that's what I was going to sell Columbia, that's exactly what I was selling. There's trust, you have trust in the city and faith that we're going to deliver and that we're committed to moving forward. So anyway, all right. So we need some type of motion to come out of this saying that we're supportive of the $72,000. Is that correct?
Are we voting or consensus? What do we?
You don't need to vote.
Okay.
Where are you on that now? He prefers y'all not to vote, but we do
All right, so
endorse or refer it out of
So,
committee.
Odyssey, do you have any reservations?
No, I think that this works moving forward.
Okay,
I agree.
okay, so we've got a consensus to move this forward.
And we will move that forward possibly next agenda.
Okay, fine. That sounds good.
And Nelson has offered to come in as early as June to our future committee meetings and. That's right.
I think they do a really good job. I think we just need to understand what that means. So, and does it fit what we want? Okay. You want to move on?
If they could come in with some suggestions.
Yeah, right.
Do, not just another general conversation.
Yeah, okay, that's part of my hangover. So you want to move Ryan to this?
Yes, sir.
Next thing.
The next item. Is this sent out? They create opportunity, which is a workforce development training program specifically focused on the information technology sector. Ben kind of went out around at the end of the time to get some governmental support for this program. We participated in it as well as Richland County. That program is being transferred over, or has been transferred over to the South Carolina Technical College System Foundation. And they will be running that from here on out. But he's come back again asking for some additional support as the program transitions over to continue help growing that as well. And so what he has put in is a $50,000 one-time request from the city if we would like to support to get that program transitioned over and to help grow it over the next few years. He did indicate this does not need to be done in a single budget year. So if we're inclined to support and we wanted to break that payment up 25 over 2-year periods, they're open to that as well. But demand for information technology jobs is growing. They've had good support through the program so far. They've placed some employees at Colonial Life, Diesel Laptops, Nephron, Yovant, and others. And that's the request before us.
Where do the students come from specifically?
So in the program, the students, and you don't necessarily have to be a college student per se, but they go on and they take an online aptitude examination, which takes about 1.5 to 2 hours. Once it kind of pre-screens you and identifies that you have, the traits that they're looking for, you do basically a 6-month boot camp through Midlands Technical College. Once that process is completed, and then you go into a 2-year apprenticeship program with an identified employer. The employer gets some labor with some preliminary training at a lower cost. So you're not paying full freight for an IT graduate. You don't have to pay the $70,000 per year. Maybe it's closer to $50,000 per year. And then the point that you finish that apprenticeship, you're finished, you've got a degree, you've got 2 years of on-the-job training, and your commitment's ended, and you can go work wherever you'd like. So it's the training and then into an apprenticeship program.
So do you have a specific recommendation for this?
Bringing it here for the consideration, sir.
So I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman. So how many you funded this last year for the first?
We funded it in 2020 to get it started, and I believe we contributed $40,000 at the time.
Okay. Since then,
we've not paid anything.
We'll just give me the success stories.
So they've got 13 students, or they've had 15 students that have completed the 6-month training program, and then they,
of course, of three years.
Yeah, so they did some initial phases where it was just 2 or 4 students apiece, because it takes a while to run through that program. Now they're kind of ramping up to where they're doing full-size cohorts, which are more the 15 students per batch.
And these are essentially. These are grants to Midlands Tech for the students to go through their program.
It basically covers tuition costs.
Is there any recommendation that or requirement that they live work in the city of Columbia afterwards, or?
They don't have to. I believe our initial request of them that they have, was it 10 came from the Columbia, from within the city of Columbia. I think they came close to meeting that. They probably gotten more around 8.
Yeah, I'm supportive of it again, but I would like to add the layer of priority for students that live within the city limits. If possible.
I guess I'm reasonably supportive of it as well. I'm just trying to figure out, you know, if we didn't do this, does this thing exist or not exist going forward? Or, you know, so it's just hard to tell. I mean, you know, I would think if it was an amazing.
What are the other funding outlets? There are other funding outlets, I believe, right?
Yeah, I mean, the employers have a buy-in, so, you know, Colonial Life, Diesel.
I mean, all I can tell you is that as an employer, you know, I'm willing to fund stuff as an employer, just hoping that I could get some employees down the road. So I mean, the fact that we're carrying, you know, I don't know how much of the freight we're actually, you know, of the total percentage. I mean, I would just think that the employers would have their own, you know.
Or the other model where they just pay versus
Well, yeah, but that's what we, I mean, in today's world where there are no employees, you know, this should be driven by the private sector, in my mind, you know, is not us.
Would it be fair to say that this model, we are taking on more of a incubator role to incubate this future workforce that will find hopefully a job at these wonderful large employers here in the city and very close to the city? I think that's more of the approach that this group is asking.
Yeah, I don't, they're not asking for a long-term recurring commitment. I see this as more of like a help kickstart this and get it to the next phase. You know, we want to transfer, we want to ramp up. And with your support, we feel like we can boost the program up to where it needs to be.
I guess what I'll say is this should be important enough to Colonial Life, Diesel Laptop, Nephron, Pharmaceuticals, Jovan, Cyberwoven to do this on their own. And really drive this thing. So I'm not saying I won't support it. I'm just saying I'm not going to support it for long if we support it, because I just don't see that this is a good use of. This is going to happen without. That's what I'm saying. This is necessary stuff in the world, in today's world, where you don't have technical employees that you need, and we're basically paying for this program when the private sector should be paying for this program. They're the ones benefiting from this, right? I mean, you know, so I mean, we know so little about this. So
yeah, and I don't know that we have to answer affirmatively or negatively today. I think, you know, this was just to kind of get the request in the queue. If there's follow-up questions that we would like to ask regarding, you know, commitment to
I would love to get
city,
more information about this to understand.
You know, if Richland or Lexington's. Sure.
Just don't why this can't just be driven through the Midlands Tech and the private sector. I just don't get it.
And I think that's a larger conversation. What's our role in workforce development and investing in it?
Right.
Yeah.
So,
but I think it's a great program, and
yeah, I'm all for it. I just don't know that it's our.
Yeah, we can just get some more information.
Do we have any questions we want to clarify on? Who else is participating from public sector?
At what level are they?
What level?
Yeah, what's the total need, and what's the total, you know, commitment, and you know, what's the private sector contributing to this? What's Midlands Tech's role? I mean, I would love
gap funding.
Yeah.
Will it move forward without the participation of the city?
Yeah, I did not get clarification on him if it was kind of a but-for situation.
I think that's what
Are there partnering opportunities for grants out there where we can partner with this nonprofit?
Sure.
Dr. Bustles, are you okay with the approach?
Yeah, and I think going back to what Councilman Brennan said about making a clear connection as to the direct benefit to the city and how many folks from this cohort are either staying after going through this program and being clear. But I agree with you, Chairman. I think that it would be a initial startup investment if we did anything. And then I think the private sector needs to take this and run with it. We need to focus our efforts on building quality of life and some of the other conversations we've had earlier today.
Totally agree. All right, everybody happy with our approach?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Brian, you got anything else?
No, sir. That was it.
Jeff, you got anything else?
That's it. I think we're good unless y'all have something else.
Man, kept us on, almost on time.
Good job.
I didn't do a lot of talking today.
So you're saving that for another time?
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, 1:00. That's correct.
I'm saving that for
If you
tonight
haven't
around
figured
9
it out,
o'clock.
if you haven't figured it out, I love to talk, so, anyway, so that's, I guess, we'll adjourn.
Yes, thank you.
Erica, you happy?
Yes, sir. Thank you.